Good morning, everyone, and hope you're all keeping well, and welcome to day 2 of our Zoom into Leaf Marque week. Very exciting week. We had an excellent day yesterday with our first surgery, and we've got another exciting one today. So today we're talking all about taking charge of change, delivering a sustainable food future through the supply chain. And we are delighted to once again be welcomed by 2 very special guests. First of all, we are joined by James Bailey, Executive Director of Waitrose Partners. And we are also joined by Mia Hartwell, Sustainability Manager at Jordan's Cereals. A very warm welcome to you both. I will hand over to Caroline Drummond shortly to kick things off. Before we do, just a bit of housekeeping. We will be doing questions and answers at the end of this surgery. If you do have a question for any of our panelists, please submit it via the chat button. If you hover over the bottom of your screen, you'll see the chat button and just type it in there, and we will try and answer as many questions as we can within the hour. All questions will remain anonymous, and if you do have a question for a specific member of our panel, please do say so. And as I say, we will try and answer as many as we can. We are also recording this surgery. And this surgery and all the other surgeries will be available to listen to from the beginning of next week. And we hope you can all join us on Friday as well. Well, we hope you can join us all week, but this Friday we will be launching our 9th Global Impacts Report, which is very, very exciting, and we hope you can join us for that too. Before we start though, just to get things moving, I'm going to launch a couple of polls, which I'd very much like you all to take part in. So you should see a question coming up on your screen any second now. The question is, do you choose produce depending on labeling? So I'm going to launch that now. And yes, feel free to fire away. You should see that on your screen if you can all answer that. And there's a lot of you answering already. Oh, you are all quick off the mark today. Good for a Tuesday morning. So we're at 72%. Do you choose? That's yeah, 71% for yes. That's amazing. That's very, very impressive. We like that, don't we, Caroline?
We do. That is excellent.
Yes, 42 out of 44. Yeah, so 71% say yes and 29% say no. So yes, excellent. Thank you for that. I'll just share those results with everyone. There you go. That's fantastic. I'm now going to just launch another one. And again, another simple yes or no question. Do you choose brands or products depending on the sustainability claims? And again, simple yes or no. If you can answer that, please. Bit more 50-50 for this one. 53%, 51% say yes, 40. Oh, bang on 50-50 now. Oh, it's neck and neck.
Any advance?
This is far too exciting.
Keep voting, keep voting.
Well, we've had 42 out of 45 answer, and I can reveal that it is absolutely neck and neck. That is extraordinary. So yes, 21 say yes, 21 say no. Brilliant. Okay, excellent. Thank you very much for that, everyone. I will now hand over to Caroline Drummond.
Thank you very much indeed, Sam. And again, welcome and good morning, everybody, and a particular welcome to James and Mia as well. Really pleased that you're joining us. I think today is a subject close to everybody's heart in terms of really trying to take charge of change. You know, if there's one thing we can be certain about, it is change. And if you don't respond and actually be in control of change, then actually you're just going to kind of go backwards rather than advance and go forward. So we're delighted that, you know, yesterday we had a really impressive session from the 2 farmers that we had speaking. I think, you know, one of the things, I meet a lot of farmers all the time, and I'm always impressed by what they do. And I think there is nothing more heartening than actually listening to the wonderful success stories of those farmers that are really committed to making a difference in terms of not only producing quality food, but alongside that, really enhancing the environment. And hearing from both Ian Collison yesterday and Simon Derrick from Blue Skies, wow, it was, you know, bigger than impressive. I don't even know what bigger than impressive was, but it was them. It's our LEAF Marque farmers. And of course, there's nothing I enjoy more than talking sustainability. I think one of the things that we know from the last, it's a year now since we kind of went into lockdown, it has changed people's lives, and people are definitely willing to do a bit more to improve their own lives, the lives of others, and that's been really evident, and of course the environment. So that wonderful thing, we all know that with nature and with farming, we get to touch every 5 senses. But that gap between our aspirations and our actual behavior can sometimes be a little bit challenging. And so making it easy is something that's really important. And that's been the driver for the last 30 years, certainly from a LEAF perspective, around, what are the things that will change our practices and change and improve and keep on driving and continuing to really embrace change. Well, we know for us that's been the integrated farm management approach, allowing farmers to juggle the different choices on a day-to-day basis. It's been the show and tell, the demonstration farmer network and our LEAF Innovation Centre network. And I'm really pleased, Leckford, the Waitrose Partners farm down just outside Winchester is one of our LEAF demonstration farmers. It's been LEAF Marque, and that's a hugely powerful change. And Waitrose has been very much at the forefront on supporting farmers, but also supporting us as individuals in terms of driving and purchasing the right things as well. And of course, the final area of change, if all else fails, then legislate. And important as legislation is as a framing, it shouldn't be the driver for the business choices. That should be making sure you do the right thing the right way for the right reasons for your business, supported by enabling legislation. And we'll of course see with the new ELMS and the Sustainable Farming Initiative coming from DEFRA here in England and Wales, and the new Scottish Rural Development's going to be supporting farmers in facilitating some of that change. I think one of the things that I would just quickly like to highlight is that we are celebrating now 30 years of LEAF. I cannot literally believe that 1991, I can remember my first day at LEAF, it was literally a table and a pencil with a lot of ideas and a great project going on in Germany because we were partnerships across Europe. And I think our vision and mission that we embraced back then has been very much on a similar vein. It is about promoting more sustainable agriculture and ensuring that on one hand, as we drive and support farmers in that area, actually we're also communicating that to the general public. So our vision now is a global farming and food system that delivers climate positive action, builds resilience, and supports health, diversity, and enrichment of our food, farms, the environment, and society. Those 3 themes of health, diversity, and enrichment underpin all our work around healthy soil, healthy water, biodiversity, bottom line for farmers, healthy people, healthy environment, and of course, our physical and mental health as well. The importance of diversity in our habitats, our crop choices and our diets, and of course, engaging across the many sectors, societies, and different cultures that we embrace through our food. And of course, that rural urban aspect of really connecting and creating stronger connections as we do through things like Open Farm Sunday and our LEAF education activity as well. Our mission as a small organisation is always about working with people to inspire and enable more circular approaches to farming and food systems through integrated, regenerative and vibrant nature-based solutions. That wonder of working with nature to deliver productivity and prosperity amongst farmers, enrich our environment and positively engage young people and wider society, not only supporting them in making the right choices about their food, but also inspiring them to consider careers in food and farming. Many of us I know around the table today are not originally from farming backgrounds. And from that perspective, all of us would have been touched and inspired at a young age about how important farming is, how important food is. And I'm just really, we're into our 16th year of Open Farm Sunday, and we've got an online version coming this Sunday. And I just think, gosh, those first sort of 4-year-olds that went out 16 years ago will now be at university, and they will be our voices as an industry a little bit more touched, a little bit more inspired, and hopefully really building that trust and transparency that we get. So I'm really pleased that we've got both Mia and James today, because I think it's been a great joy to continue to work with both Waitrose and indeed the Jordan's Farm partnership. But to start off with, James, really thank you for joining us. We've been working with Waitrose for 30 years now, which is a real joy. I think you make food shopping a pleasure. I went and raided, you'll see, and there will be a quiz by the end to identify how many things this sort of over the week suddenly comes in terms of Leaf Marque produce. But the Waitrose Farm partnership, in fact, even as well, I've got a bit of Leckford Leaf Marque oil here. You make food shopping a pleasure, and at times just too expensive, because you think, oh, I might just need that as well, because the food is such a joy. But I think importantly, you also make sustainable choices easy, and that's through Leaf Marque and indeed the values of Waitrose. And I think the other thing that often perhaps we don't thank you enough is you support our work, which then creates that circular opportunity for us to do a better job, to deliver more sustainable farming on the ground, and to communicate further. So I think we have a lot to thank you at Waitrose, but thank you today, particularly for joining us. And I've got a few questions for you. So to start off with, and I appreciate, although you're the executive director is a relatively new job for you. You've been in the sector for a long time. What does working with Leaf Marque mean to you, and obviously to Waitrose from your perspective?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Caroline, and for everyone else. Is there a big echo there, or is that just me?
There's a little echo.
Okay, I'll keep going. Well, look, thanks for having me. Much appreciated. Caroline, a pleasure to meet you. Finally, I've heard so much about you. I will listen intently to the rest of the session, see if I can learn something myself. That would be useful. And thanks to everyone else for joining. I will attempt to add a bit of value. So, first things first, I can't claim any of the credit at all for the Leaf and Waitrose relationship. If it's 30 years old, I was at university 30 years ago. So I owe any of this credit. Yeah, sorry. I owe any or all of that credit to my predecessors who had the vision to connect with this issue that long ago, and obviously to Caroline and to Leaf for beginning to put the flag in the ground that said this was really important. So I think we're probably only beginning now, not in the last maybe 3 or 4 years, to see how visionary that principle was. So it was it's my pleasure to carry that flag forward, but I can't take any of the credit looking backwards too much. So I mean, the Leaf Marque, what does it mean to Waitrose? What does it mean to our strategy? It's incredibly important, not only because clearly the partnership has its principles and its way of doing business. We like to pride ourselves on being different from listed businesses, from big businesses. The principle is that we make a sustainable profit, sufficient profit, but that we don't maximize profit. We look to reinvest, we look to think for the long term, and we look to do the right thing for our partners, but also our customers and the community. So it gives us leg room to do things differently. And the Leaf Marque is a great example of that, Caroline. As you said, I suspect we have overinvested, we've lent in, we've looked for ways to help you guys do what you do. And I think we're very lucky that the partnership is set up in a way that we're able to do that. I know lots of other grocers do the same thing. I know that this isn't a matter of Waitrose versus the rest. This is an everyone collaborating conversation from now onwards, and I know that's it's not a conversation that Leaf and Waitrose can take too much further without lots of other people involved. But broadly, look, the Leaf Marque means what it means, which is a sustainable future. The question is, how much do our customers understand that? How much does the industry understand that? And how can we work collaboratively to make that a much more impactful thing going forwards? Because there's a lot of meaning behind that, behind the badge. But I'm not convinced that yet the customers really understand, or that we do enough to communicate that. And I sense that the agenda is coming towards us like a tidal wave this year, with things like COP and the UN's Food System Summit. I suspect the the amount of information, the amount of news about the subject is going to overtake us this year. So I think we need to be on the front foot in terms of how we land that with our customers and what impact we can have with it.
Mm. And how do you see sort of customers really getting more involved? I mean, in Open Farm Sunday, you're a huge supporter of Open Farm Sunday. And each year, over 250,000 people go out onto farm. So do you see that as a sort of a great inroad, as an opportunity? And of course, your own partners.
Yeah, I think that is incredibly important. I think people need to feel connected to the food system. People need to understand where the food comes from. I think there is a huge upswell for all of the damage that COVID has done. I think what it has done is sort of recenter everyone on their local communities a little bit. And if you're lucky enough to live somewhere where you can go for a walk, people have been for a walk and had a look around and seen the crops over the course of a year grow up, be harvested, and be replanted. So I wonder if there's a moment here where Open Farm Sunday can take advantage of that kind of momentum, and help people reconnect. I think there's an underlying swell of interest in the idea of connecting with the food system. But like I say, I think Open Farm is one way in, but I suspect that consumers more than before, in the near future, consumers more than before will be coming towards us asking questions, challenging questions, demanding more information, demanding more transparency. And I think it's at that point that we have to have the bricks built in a wall that says that we know where we're heading with this, but collectively it's going to take change. And in the end, there's only so many things we can put in front of consumers if they're not engaged on the subject. Great ideas have come and gone in the past because consumers weren't prepared to pay more for them or didn't understand what they were paying more for. And we can't fall into that trap, because the only way this works, there has to be an enormous change in the food system going forward. But the only way it works is if consumers understand that change and are prepared to support it. So education, transparency and trust will drive that consumer behaviour forwards, and we have to make sure that's true.
And I guess, I mean, that's, often, well, in fact, gosh, it was a statistic, and there are, in fact, 456 eco-labels across Europe. But there are actually here in the UK just sort of 5 independently, externally verified standards. And I think often, something that is kind of a brand is often confused with the value of an independently, externally verified standard like LEAF Marque. So the 5 in the UK being Red Tractor there as a core value for food safety, the 2 organic standards, Organic Farmers for Growers and Soil Association, RSPCA assured, and of course LEAF Marque. And from your perspective, how important do you think the sort of and what are really the benefits of working with independently, externally verified standards?
I think it's really important. I think we're caught in a trap a little bit because it's very difficult, as you say. There are a lot of badges that you can and do put on food, but customers really hardly ever see most of them. So you can count on one hand sometimes the number of badges that really customers do understand, and they do change their buying behaviour for. I mean, you saw on the SAM survey at the beginning, even in an audience as engaged and knowledgeable as this one, there's still only probably half of consumers are prepared to pick up a product based on the badges or on their understanding of its sustainable footprint. So it's really important to have independence in that process, because trust is vital. It's hard earned and easily lost. And I don't think with the best will in the world, I don't think even Waitrose could put a badge on something and it have the same meaning as if you could go into a Tesco's, a Sainsbury's and other places and pick up the same badge, and you get a consistent confidence in that product. So I think independent assurance schemes are really, really important. And of course they are the very essence of collaboration in the system, because we have to collaborate to agree the standards. We have to collaborate to agree the processes that underpin the standard. And so in a funny kind of way, they're the precursor to the way we're going to have to work together to solve the issues facing us. So I think that independence and the building robust independent schemes and the badge that communicates that to the customers, I think that's incredibly important.
No, and we're very grateful. We love working with your team, Rebecca Hesketh and Rob Hughes and Jake Pickering. They're brilliant. Well, and the rest of them. Sorry, I've forgotten lots of their names, but they are absolutely brilliant to work with, because again, we're all wanting ultimately to try and come up with a solution that works and that makes it acceptable. I mean, you talked about customers rarely seeing, and you know, you have obviously highlighted that I'm very old now, but I you know, when you're going shopping with your kids, you're sort of, you know, from that perspective, you don't kind of really have time to look at logos. When you're over 50, you can't actually see the logos. So how important do you see, and where do you see the new technology? Because there must be a raft of new opportunity, particularly with sort of generation Z and alpha and beta and etc. coming through.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? I think technology has got an enormous role to play. I think it can be an enormous force for good in this space. You know, I know there's still an awful lot of work to do, but the idea that your shopping basket you could get a running total of the price, but at the same time maybe the carbon footprint or some measure of sustainability. I think information is key in here, and that technology really does enable new ways of receiving and giving and interrogating information. To be honest, I quite like customers to be able to understand the footprint they were buying into, but also to understand how they might be able to change its own nudging behavior in different ways. So yes, I think technology could be a huge part of the solution. And you mentioned that, you know, the generational shift there. I'm pretending to be young. I'm really not. I've got young. I'm made to feel old by my children, but what I'm always amazed by is how environmentally aware they are. And you know, my oldest son Max is 10, and if we're ever out and about, you know, he's pretty consistently, especially in shops, he's pretty consistently checking for cardboard, checking for plastics. He will pick brilliantly for me. He'll pick stuff up in Waitrose and argue about how much plastic there is in the packaging. And annoyingly, he's right. So I think this is part of the moment we're in. I think there's a generation of humans. I was going to say customers, but just humans who are going to demand more. And I think that's probably right. And I suspect I'm probably just lucky to be in a position to do something about it at just this moment. But there's a lot to do. So I think generations and technology will push a large part of this change forwards.
Yes, I mean, I think you're right there, and one of the challenges is, though, because of the speed of change that's needed, is around the challenge of greenwash. So, you know, if we look at some of the last real food challenges, we had 2008. You know, that was a big food challenge. Fraud in food became a problem, and indeed, you know, now we still see challenges around food fraud and the dark kitchens and things like that are popping up left, right, and centre. And I guess how do we ensure that we really rise above? Because, you know, there's a lovely saying, a rising tide lifts all boats, but there is sometimes there's a bit of rockiness at sea. Yes.
I mean, there's obviously a risk, because I think the idea of not being sustainably conscious for a business these days carries an enormous risk. So on the one hand, that's brilliant, because it's, you know, the environment for change is there now, and it's an imperative. On the other hand, of course, there's some risks that come with that. I mean, it sounds a bit silly, but one of the first ways to make sure we are addressing greenwashing is not to do it. So, you know, if you're committed to something, then commit for the reasons you understand. All of these issues are very complex, and there are pros and cons to every approach. It's an ever connected system, so there is no one solution. If there was, we'd already have done it. But don't, you know, just if something isn't genuine, if it isn't meaningful, if you're saying something that feels too much for what's behind the words, then don't do it. You know, I think transparency and honesty have to be part of the process, because if you, as I said before, if you lose the trust of consumers, and certainly definitely if you lose trust within the food system, all of the people on this call, and, you know, all of our suppliers, our consumers, that it's all interconnected. If you lose that trust, then the whole thing takes an awful lot longer than it needs to. So I think trust and transparency are the killer things, but being honest about what we can and can't achieve, what the outcomes and outputs need to be and can be. And I think if we can all hold ourselves to a standard like that, then we can do away with greenwashing, get along with fixing the problem.
Yes, and I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it was interesting when we first started doing Open Farm Sunday. The farmers used to say, "Oh, we won't show them the sprayer. And we say, well, why not? You know, are you ashamed of it? No, because it's just going to cause problems, because people think, oh, you're spraying. And if you're ashamed, if you are doing a bad job of it, then change what you're doing, because again, we do use chemicals, but in the right place at the right time. And there's new technology, good rotations as well, that adds to a sort of integrated pest management. So honesty is very key. And I know Jenny and her team, goodness, have sweated hard in terms of ensuring trust and transparency is something that we adhere to through our ISIL obligations. And in fact, Friday, the launch of our global impacts report, we're the only farm assurance scheme that does that here in the UK for food, and it's something that we're very proud of, because it is demonstrating farmers are going through all this wonderful effort, and here's what they're doing. So yes, I could not agree more. Well, thank you very much indeed, James, and I know there'll be a lots of questions coming through, and over now to you, Mia, because we love working with Jordans as well, and welcome, and thank you very much indeed for joining us. Do you want to highlight a little bit about the project, the Jordans Farm Partnership, and indeed, why it works from your perspective, working with the farmers and obviously LEAF Marque?
Yeah, sure thing. So Jordan Cereals, we've been doing what we call nature-friendly farming for well over 30 years. So it's really been at the heart of the brand ever since the Jordans brothers founded it. But in 2016, we wanted to go a step further and make sure that we really were going above and beyond for nature, because I think it's very easy for us to talk about sustainability and get wrapped up in carbon and in plastic pollution, but we are facing a biodiversity crisis at the same time, which we all need to be doing more towards. So in 2016, we partnered with yourselves at LEAF, the wildlife trusts, and also, of course, our 31 oat farmers in the UK to form the Jordans Farm Partnership. And the premise of this is to help our oat growers do the very best, not only to grow their crops in the most sustainable way, but also to be doing more for wildlife. So Jordans, for, as I said, over 30 years, our farmers have been dedicating at least 10% of their land to wildlife habitats, but the Jordans Farm Partnership has taken it a step further. So by partnering with LEAF, you've given us the assurance that the crops are grown sustainably. So the integrated farm management system is a crucial part of that. We then work with the wildlife trusts, who create a bespoke plan for every single farm to make sure that the wildlife on that farm is nurtured and given the best chance as well. So it's kind of going a step beyond for biodiversity. It's not just about creating the habitats and managing the farm in the most responsible way possible, but it's also making sure that those farmers are actively managing land to create habitats for the unique wildlife that they each find, because they're all across the UK. So we're very proud of the partnership. It's 5 years old this year, and LEAF are an integral part of that.
Thank you. Well, and we enjoy it as well. And I think one of the things we pride ourselves as an organisation is the fact that it's just not the farming system. There is that depth beyond the meeting with the farmers, the discussing, and that's, I think, been a really important part, both from a Waitrose perspective, but also, as you say, from a Jordan's perspective, of actually addressing things head on that are practical and achievable and site specific. And that's something that's very, very key. And in terms of how you're communicating that to your customers as well and your consumers, how are you seeing them? Are they more interested in the sustainability agenda too?
Yes, well, I think the poll that sounded earlier was very interesting. The fact that we got 50-50 here, which might not be as high as some of us hoped, that is still a massive step change, I would say, versus 10 years ago. How many of us were actually looking at labels probably at all around sustainability 10 years ago? So there has been a massive shift in terms of people's awareness around these issues, be it plastic, that was a real watershed moment, I would say, a couple of years ago, but more awareness is around carbon and finally biodiversity as well. We realise that people are now beginning to care about this. And I think lockdown, as you said earlier, Caroline, has allowed us all to connect with nature that little bit more. And we've all got outside and appreciated everything nature does for us, just from lifting our spirits to growing the food that we all need. So We are actually focusing a huge amount on telling our customers about everything that Jordan's does with the Jordan's Farm Partnership to protect nature, because we know that they care about this and they want to find out more about brands, what they're doing to protect the world that we live in. And also, we know that people hold brands responsible. It's up to us as a collective to be making the change, because people can't go and make the change by themselves unless the options are there on their shelf. So Waitrose obviously lead the way in this. You can go into a Waitrose store and anything with a LEAF mark on, you can be assured is going to be good for the planet. But people need those options. So we're out there talking more and more about what Jordan's does with the Jordan's Farm Partnership. And there's lots coming live in the next month. So you'll be seeing Jordan cereals popping up in lots of places very soon.
Great. No, and I think, you know, this whole area you've highlighted in terms of it is about reputational risk. Mm-hmm. And I guess for you, that's the importance as well of going down the independent route rather than the challenge of the greenwash approach.
Oh, totally. And I think that is one of the major benefits that working with yourselves at LEAF brings. It's that independent assurance that our farmers are doing the very best that they can. We're not marking our own homework. You're marking our homework for us, and we know that you're the best. So it's that credibility. And I think that's, well, as James was saying, in terms of maintaining that trust, having that credibility is so important. And LEAF provides that by going out and independently auditing all of our farms and providing a future focus as well. So as we look towards the future, how can we keep the Jordan's Farm Partnership as a pioneering partnership? LEAF are a really important part of that in terms of giving us direction, being at the forefront and leading the way in that area.
Yeah, I think that I love the marking your own homework piece. I think that's a really good analogy. Yeah, one of the things during lockdown, my daughter, in all honesty of any daughter, said my bottom was too big and therefore I needed to exercise. And so I took up CrossFit. And in the first few months that I did it, you know, you kind of go from sort of 0 to 80, and because you suddenly sort of realize that you really are stretching the capability of your body. And as I've got better, actually, it's, you know, I am fitter, and thank you to Gabrielle and thank you to the wonderful people at Kerno CrossFit. But I think it's actually, I use this analogy very much with farming, because there's a lot of farmers who are doing really well, and doing that first bit of doing something really well takes a bit of time and quite a lot of change. The next bit of doing something a bit better is those incremental gains. So now, you know, it's a little bit a heavier weight, or a little bit sort of longer, or a little bit more intense. And I think we're almost at that stage from what you're saying as well with the farmers. There's the sort of the little incremental bits of improvements. But alongside that, there is going to also be potentially radical changes. And I think we're getting sort of, whether it be carbon, you know, I can remember from 1999, our farmers were doing really well in their energy efficiency. And then it all fell off, you know, it fell to the ground because we introduced renewables. It was a new technology. And the day we introduce, I guess, hydrogen tractors or alternatives to cement and things like that is going to bring, you know, another step change. And I suppose a bit of an unfair question, but where do you see the sort of the next step change? Sorry, a really unfair question, sorry.
Oh, blimey. It's a big question, Caroline, in terms of the next.
Question, yes.
I think I can talk about it from a Jordan's Farm Partnership perspective, in terms of our farmers do so much already from all sorts of environmental angles on their farms. For us, it's about really taking a step back and saying, right, if we were launching this tomorrow, what would we do differently? And there are so many different areas you can go, but I think carbon is something that is obviously on everyone's agenda. I mean, it's such a complex issue, though, as well, to get to the root of. But with food production, the latest Nature paper saying up to 36% of the world's emissions are coming from food production now. It's an area we all really need to get to grips on. So we have been doing a huge amount for biodiversity on our Jordan's farms, and we've been doing that for over 30 years. That's what really makes them special. But there is some great work going on around growing the crops more efficiently in a way that reduces carbon, about using the energy more efficiently. We want to be making more of that and helping use the Jordan's Farm Partnership as a ideal of best practice, I suppose, using LEAF as the core part of that, showing that you can be tackling not only biodiversity, but climate change. All of these issues can be addressed through our supply chains and our farms. So yeah, lots to go after, that's for sure.
Yes, and I think you're right. I mean, Ian Collison yesterday, really cracking statistics that he brought in. He said that he had reduced his carbon footprint per stem of flowers, this is from Collison cut flowers, by 36% over the last 6 years. So it's doable. But actually beyond that was the added benefits. So he, it had been the biodiversity and then, and then the water efficiency, and then he put in a reservoir, and then he thought, well, actually the reservoir could do something for biodiversity as well. So, and then thought, oh, maybe I can get some floating solar PV. And you can see the sort of the building steps, exactly what you were saying right at the very beginning too, James, about the foundation stones and the building bricks of making change happen. So brilliant. Thank you very much indeed, Mia. And thank you, James. So Sam, I'm sure we have lots of questions for our wonderful speakers.
We do indeed, yes. And yeah, just a reminder to everyone, if you do have a question for our panel, please use the chat function and we will try and answer as many questions as we can. Before we go to the Q&A though, I'm just going to run our third and final poll. This is a bit of a multiple choice one, just to get a nice feel for everyone's buying habits. So the question coming up is, why do you choose to buy products and brands? And there's all sorts of different options there. So if you want to get voting, the options are sustainability claims, price, logos on labeling, country of origin, and offers in store. And hopefully you should all be able to see that on the screen now. You can pick as many as you like, and yeah, we can see the votes are starting to come in now. And again, it looks like it's a bit of a split across the board. Country of origin seems to be leading the way at the moment, closely followed by the price. It's like a horse race, this, isn't it? Right, so let me just share those results. We've had 46 of the 50 participants answer now, so let's have a look at that. And if I share the results now, we can see that country of origin leads the way with 72%, followed by price with 67%, offers in store 57%, sustainability claims 52%, and logos on labeling at 28%. Interesting results there, Caroline, I think you'll agree.
Yeah, no, very interesting. I'm pleased to see sustainability claims up at 52%. It was interesting from the Good Housekeeping February statistics. They'd seen people increase their interest in purchasing sustainable produced products by 34%, so that's good. Country of origin, yes, I mean, it's interesting. So is that country of origin to buy British or country of origin to support other countries? So yeah, as with any question, you can unpack it a little bit further as well. So, and actually, I know not everybody around the our table at the moment is in the UK either. So yeah, there's the whole depth of very interesting questions. I think what's also good, and I think some 47% of consumers recognise LEAF Marque. So that's another good statistic we should have put in there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And just touching on that 47%, and obviously this, not everyone will necessarily be aware of that statistic, but yes, recent studies show that 47% of consumers recognize the LEAF Marque logo. How can we turn that particular statistic into better buying decisions from the consumers? And I think that's something that I'd like to put to all panelists really. So James, I think if we can start with you, how can we turn that recognition into buying decisions from the consumer?
Well, much as I hate to say it, because I can hear myself saying it, is we have to help consumers get educated. To be honest, whenever anyone says that to me, I bridle a little bit and say, no, we're a supermarket, not a school. But there has to be a process here where consumers begin to understand the impact of their choices and their decisions. And even if at the moment the food system, the commercial food system, doesn't recognise the environmental impact, it's not properly priced in. And if it was, then consumers probably would make different choices. And we've got to bridge the gap between those two things somehow with information, and give people easy to digest information on which to make some informed choices. So it's, whether that's a nudge, whether it's a collective effort to improve the quality of the information in the system, you can see it working in parts, but not as a whole at the moment. So I think broadly, if you give consumers the right information, they will start to make informed choices, and that's the best we can probably hope for.
I'd add to that as well in terms of, I think there's a visibility piece going on here as well. So 47% awareness, I think, is great for LEAF. But I think there's a virtuous circle that we could be doing more for in terms of getting the LEAF logo in its simplest form out there more, driving curiosity around what is that. Consumers will then start to look into it, trying to find out what is that about. I think if we can start revving up that virtuous circle around driving more awareness of LEAF, and then as more people recognize it, more businesses and brands wanting to come on board, that's how we start to step change the awareness of that and bring up the standards so that more people are looking for LEAF certified products, and also more businesses and suppliers are growing to those standards too, of course. So bringing up the standard for growers across the world, because I love that LEAF is global as well.
Can I ask a supplementary question to that, Sam? One of the things over in the farm to fork developments in Europe is by 2024 they are going to be introducing a sustainability label. At the moment they're talking possibly as a traffic light system. How do you think that would work? And I kind of, you know, we would hope that LEAF Marque would be one of the supporting document or, you know, systems that would be able to feed into that sustainability label, of course. Do you see it being that if you buy a red sustainability label product, is that going to create second-class citizens, or is it going to be more expensive? How would you see something like that working? Because it could be, you know, it could be brilliant from a LEAF Marque perspective, because it's all green. Well, we hope we get all green, assuming green's good. But yeah, if you buy red, you just think, oh goodness, should be more expensive actually.
Mia, do you want to try and answer that one?
I'll try. I think it's going to be a really, really tricky one, because I think there's so much negativity around sustainability, which is a real shame, but it disempowers people. I think as soon as you start to see a red traffic light on something when it comes to sustainability, but if you're price constrained by any shape or form, you know, you've got a family to feed, I think it's going to start it potentially augments the negativity that people can have and the sense of powerlessness they can have around sustainability, when actually this labeling should be a really reaffirming positive choice. So it will be fascinating to see what it comes out like, but I would be interested to see whether they go with a red, amber, green, which is really hits you in terms of something red really is bad, versus something like we see with the health star rating in Australia, maybe a star system, for example, where it still creates a sense of responsibility, but keeps people feeling positive and that they feel they can make a change around this area through what they buy and what they eat, because I think that's a really important part of where we need to take this forward. We need to keep things positive to make people feel that they can make a difference and that it's not doom and gloom. So I hope it won't be as blunt as red, amber, green. I hope it will be slightly more sophisticated to help people feel that they can take part and make a difference through their food choices.
Brilliant. Thank you, everyone. I
agree. I mean, I think making people guilty is not a brilliant way of change, without a doubt. Sorry, Sam.
No, that's fine. It's an important point. There is a question here, and you know, this kind of touches on what we've already been discussing. It's probably aimed at you, Caroline, more than anyone, but what plans, if any, is there to promote the LEAF logo in the hospitality industry?
Well, it's an area we're certainly got in our sights. I think we have in the past worked through, we've worked with organisations like Sodexo, and it's trying to identify where are those opportunities. So I know certainly in a lot of canteens, in fact in the DEFRA canteen, you know, there are little pieces of information on the table when people share food and things like that. But at the moment, that's going to be a very big challenge. And I think the great thing is about LEAF Marque, we know from our sort of statistics that whilst 43% of UK fruit and veg is LEAF Marque certified, and we believe that when we announce things on Friday, that might have just moved a little bit forward as well. But actually there are other areas that are virtually 100% LEAF Marque certified. And in fact, there's this sort of almost environment by stealth, sustainability by stealth. The fact that a lot of food products on the table are LEAF Marque certified, and that actually means, me, when I'm consuming a meal, I am being more responsible because the sustainability choice is already made for me. And I think that's one of the areas, but it's certainly within our sights. And whoever asked the question, if there's any thoughts and ideas that you have, please share, because in our 10-year strategy, this is a very key, this is about scalability and growth and change, but it's about partnerships as well.
Thank you, Caroline. There was a question actually that appeared in yesterday's surgery, which I think also has relevance today, and it's something that's worth putting to both James and Mia, and that's the subject of low carbon diets. They seem to be rising in popularity, and I was just wondering what the thoughts of James and Mia were as far as low carbon diets are concerned. Do you see that as something being as sustainable, and is it a market that your respective organizations are working towards?
Well, good question. I think it depends what you mean by low carbon. So if you're talking about the Uber conversation is meat versus not meat, and fundamentally the more you read about the subject, you can't, I don't think we can get all the way we need to get without addressing the balance between the amount of meat in the food system and the amount of non-meat. That's not to say that there's no meat left. It's just that the meat you produce has to be high standard, it has to be environmentally sustainable, etc. And that's a massive, enormous global consumer, commercial, business conversation. It's not to Caroline's point, it's not making people feel guilty about eating meat. It's about education. It's about encouragement and a big conversation. If you're thinking more broadly about low carbon versus high carbon food, again, I might be being simplistic, but I come back to labeling and information. And I think provided with more information that we can rely on, it's hard. So it's never as clear as it could be. Even very well-meaning, very well-educated experts disagree on the carbon footprint of products at the moment. So it makes labeling quite difficult, but we will get there. But I think with labeling, with trusted labeling, I think consumers will begin to factor these things into their consideration. It's an enormous leap from there to assume that carbon can be priced into food, because that's a completely different setup. But I think just having the information to begin with would be fascinating to see how consumers react to understanding the carbon footprint of the food they consume at the moment, and being given simple suggestions about how they could improve it.
Yeah, and I think I'd add to that, in the short term, it's actually in some ways a fairly easy conversation, in terms of if we all ate some more plants, we're probably going to bring down the carbon impact of our overall diets. And I think that's possibly a way I would anticipate seeing a joint approach in terms of low carbon, but also health going together hand in hand. So if we get more plant-based ingredients, that's going to be beneficial for carbon. If we get more plant-based ingredients, that's beneficial for our gut health, for our microbiome. We're going to feel better as well. And I think that's a great way of bringing more people into considering the impact of their food. More people are thinking about what's in it for me, my health. The next step is what's in it for me and my world, essentially. So if we can get those two going hand in hand, I think we'll start to drive that agenda more, and you can see it increasing with those two joint motivations as such. But yes, in the longer term, when it comes to the meat piece as well, it's very, very complex, and I can only imagine where it's going to go over the next 10 to 20 years in terms of that carbon labeling potentially, and how that affects different categories as well.
I think it's interesting. It's complicated, so that's the challenge, isn't it? And I can remember when Gabriella, our daughter, was about sort of 6 or 7, and there was carbon labeling on crisps. Obviously, she only had one pack for the whole of the year, but on the packet of crisps that was sort of 35 grams was a 60-gram embedded sort of carbon footprint. And what does that mean? Where is that carbon? And I think it's a really complicated carbon story. And then on top of that, now sort of young people go through those ages, don't they? And James, you said your son's now looking at recycling. You know, my daughter's in her early 20s now, and they're all about body beautiful and getting fit, and you know, all this sort of balance of proteins, carbs and fats and everything. And then you move into the next sort of phases of life, and you realize that you have to eat, well, as wonderful Michael Pollan said, you eat food, not too much, mainly vegetables. But that bioavailability is such a key aspect, and we somehow lost that in the fact that 54% of the food we eat is ultra processed, and there is a danger a lot of the plant products that are currently available are increasingly ultra processed. And I think, you know, let's hope that some of the sort of the cooking experiences that people have had during lockdown kind of push people, encouraging them to eat food, and proper food that looks like food. So yeah,
we've had a barrage of questions come through, so we better get through as many as we can before the time runs out. Again, for both of you, how could potential HFSS rules, and by that of course we mean high in fat, sugar and salt, how could those potential rules for retailers benefit Leaf and fruit and veg products? What would retailers look like with the changes?
Different. I'll give you the quick answer. There's about a 4-hour answer to that one if you want to ask my team, but conscious of time. Look, supportive of HFSS, even if I can't always repeat it clearly. A bit more time to understand and implement the change would be great from a retailer point of view, but it is what it is, and I think it's, you know, the more you wait on things like this, the more harm is done in the background. So I think it could be a positive thing for fresh food. I think it could and should be, but it depends how the market and retailers respond. So remove a lot of those things from gondola ends, remove them from deals, change the pricing structures. Clever manufacturers and retailers will find ways of still presenting value to consumers, because you know, consumers do still want the odd treat here or there. But can you find more balance in the way you use some of your premium space, the way you invest in your pricing, and the way you promote foods? Yes, you can. It takes quite a lot of thought and effort to make sure that's done in the right way, and it's in a different way, a sustainable change, not just a sort of a lurch to the other end of the spectrum that doesn't last either. It's got to be meaningful. It's got to be built into the system, but I think it can be. So I think it's possible.
And I'm going to leave that to Sam, because I'm not in a retailer, so I can't really comment on that one.
I do have another question here. It's mainly directed again at James. Adopting regenerative practices will likely reduce yield in the short term. This can be a barrier. Will or should retailers be more forgiving to this in order to serve the varied long-term purposes and goals of sustainable food supply?
Yes. But collectively, collaboratively, I think if you're working with your supply chain, if you're collaborating on and you have a series of shared goals, you know, we should be working with farms 20 years out and saying, right, what's the collective ambition here? A, that we're both in business in 20 years time, and B, that by that point or before then, preferably, we are circular. We are not leaving our footprint on the land we're using, but to do that you need a long-term plan, and I think as long as you do have a long-term joined up plan and you're both signed up to it, then yeah, you have to deal with the peaks and troughs. That's always the case. And if investment is required to progress farming standards, farming practice beyond a certain point, yeah, and it's a well understood curve, then yeah, let's collaborate to work out how you adjust for that, adapt that cost, and you don't end up with a business that's less financially sustainable, but you know, greener from the outside. It's got to be both.
Thank you. Another question here: Are our metrics on sustainability good enough? For example, can we properly account for role of livestock in circular systems? Who wants to take that one?
Well, I'll take it, because the answer, of course, is no. I mean, I think it's really interesting to sort of, one, you know, you have to revise, and metrics can be very blunt, and the metrics have to be aligned to different aspects. So you could take the high level metrics, which are around the delivery of the Sustainable Development Goals. And we're kind of all signed up to that. And ultimately, that's what we're trying to achieve, in terms of a more circular economy. But when it comes to measurements and actually trying to get definitions of what good looks like on farm, some metrics are going to be really straightforward. And there's some very good livestock metrics in terms about mobility within livestock, fertility, feeding efficiency, and of course in crops as well, around yields, nitrogen use efficiency, soil health, water quality, etc. But I think there are two levels. We need to be very clear. They have to be aligned to the farms. They have to be aligned to each other. So, in the work that we've done through the Leaf Sustainable Farming Review and obviously through LEAF Marque, we have been able to drive an element of change, of knowing what good looks like. But sometimes, as I gave the example of energy, that change suddenly takes a complete leapfrog, and the metric has to be because you've got a new technology, because you've got a new challenge, because all of a sudden the temperature's gone up everywhere across the world by 1.5 degrees centigrade or whatever. And so therefore that flexibility within a metrics, which can be very blunt at times, has to be solved. But we do need to get some more effective and harmonized metrics, and that's certainly a lot where we've done, Jenny and her team have done a lot in terms of impact reporting, and we're working with the Sustainable Food Trust, AHDB and others in terms of trying to sort that. Government has always done indicators and measurements as well. And I also put in that little bit of another sort of thing is, not everything that can be measured matters, and not everything that matters can be measured. And I think, we also need to be really careful, because farming offers so many other goods besides the food products. There's a load of social and environmental measurements as well.
Just expanding on that, Caroline, how do you think then we can get more farmers to commit to LEAF standards and certification?
Well, James is the man to answer that one, really.
It was a question directed at you specifically.
Oh, was it? Oh, okay. Obviously the market pull is really key, but in addition to that, I would hope, what's great, we've got a younger generation of farmers who are enthusiastic to embrace change. We have all generations of farmers who are also recognize, there is a huge amount of change. We're not the new kids on the block. We've got a legacy that is practical, pragmatic, and realistic. And I think from that point of view, we work with farmers to embrace what they're doing currently and create the nudge for improving. And LEAF Marque, very few people say thank you to a farmer. And I think, actually LEAF Marque is a way of saying thank you. You're doing a really good job. And I think sometimes that element of pride is something that can be rewarded through, obviously, things like LEAF Marque.
I'm just going to end. I'm just going to ask one more question, because it's a very important one, and it is aimed both at James and Mia. Just looking ahead to the future and the working relationship that you have with LEAF and LEAF Marque, are there any plans to expand working with LEAF Marque across your range of products?
I can go first.
Yeah,
well, we work with LEAF. The main ingredient in all of our cereals is oats. They're in our Country Crisp, they're in our granola, they're in our muesli, porridge. So LEAF are core to that supply chain's core to us in terms of where we can make a difference, and hence LEAF are a really important part of that. Obviously, we would love to work with LEAF if there are other supply chains that are able to tap into. And I know, LEAF, you've got more global ambitions. maybe raspberries. It's a case of scale as well, though, I would say, in terms of different suppliers having a different sense of scale within their supply chain. So oats, we can really make a difference because we buy a lot of oats to go into our cereals. Hence, getting LEAF certified oats is really important. But it's where else can we make an impact? And of course, LEAF is always a partner that we consider on that journey, always.
And just very quickly, James, is there anything to add to that?
Well, at the moment, I mean, all of our British fruit and veg is LEAF marked. Even things like Christmas trees and cut flowers are at Waitrose LEAF marked. So there's a lot going on. I know the team are at the moment trialing some livestock work, which I think they're really excited about. And I think there's some real potential in that. And clearly that opens up a whole new world. So I think we're on the verge of being able to start to share information on that. So I think that's probably the next boundary for us, which is quite exciting.
Excellent. Well, thank you both very much. It's been another brilliant session, and thank you both to James and Mia for taking time out of your extremely busy schedules to join us today. It's been a really wonderful session, and thank you all for joining us as well. We're going to wrap it up there. Caroline did mention earlier that all LEAF Marque UK grown fruit and veg is at 43%. If you want to know if that statistic has changed, you'll have to join us this coming Friday when we launch our Global Impacts report, which will be very exciting. If you do want to join us for any more of the events that we've got lined up for this week, including this Friday, I have just shared a link in the chat with you all, so you can see what further events we've got coming up. Tomorrow, I can tell you that we will be talking about policy. We're talking about the politics of feeding the world sustainably. We will be joined by Sarah Mukherjee, CEO of the Institute of Environmental Management and Assessment. And we will also be joined by Cedric Porter as well, who I'm sure many of you know. He's on the LEAF board, and he also edits the Potato Review, but he's a big supporter of LEAF, so yes, we hope you can join us for that as well. In the meantime, thank you all very much for joining us today. Thank you especially to James and Mia for being with us today, and we hope to see you again at some point this week.